Hey guys, welcome back to Wild West Woodscraft. My name is Trevor. And whether you like hiking on clean trails like this, or walking cross country like this, or busting brush like this, it's important to be able to know how to not get lost. Carrying a map and compass is something that's often said that you should do, but rarely is it talked about how to use it. And then if it is, it's this overly complicated system that has a barrier to entry, and most people just don't want to take the time to learn. While it's incredibly fun and I recommend you learn it, I want to show you guys a few tips to keep you from getting lost, and if you do get lost, knowing how to always find your way out. The reason I think navigation is important and being able to not get lost is because if you research the most common reasons for why people end up having to either call search and rescue, perish out in the wilderness, or have an emergency situation, are usually related to getting lost, succumbing to the elements, because whether it's heat exhaustion, dehydration, hypothermia, stuff like that, or getting injured. And a fourth one would be loss of conveyance. So that would be like you're out four-wheeling, canoeing, and you lose your means of transportation, and then you're stuck because you're so far back that there's just no way to get out on foot. But getting lost is a very common one, especially for most people who spend time outdoors. I recently had a friend ask me for some tips about getting away from using like a phone and having some backup options with a map and compass. And so I wanted to talk about that. Oftentimes you hear, don't trust your smartphone, don't trust a GPS because it could lose battery, which is very true. These are also electronic. They're susceptible to water. Now, good GPSs like this Garmin watch aren't as much, but it can run out of battery. It can be broken. Like, these are rather fragile instruments, and so they can be broken. Plus, they can also be lost. And it's just not good to rely on technology, in my opinion. It's not a reliable way. Now, it is a convenient way. So having a GPS as your primary way of navigating, like AllTrails is an app that's commonly used, or Onyx. I don't really have experience with either of those, but I know a lot of people who do. And if that's your primary way to navigate, you like going out on the weekends, going for a hike, and you're just gonna pull out your phone and find a trail and follow that trail, that's fine. But what happens when you lose cell service, or you forgot to download the map, or your phone dies, and you walk off the trail to go look at something cool, or you have to use the bathroom, something like that, whatever reason, and now you can't find your way back to your trail. Maybe a storm rolls in and it starts snowing and you can't find the trail. Like, there's lots of reasons you can get lost. Or you like exploring. You don't want to be bound to a trail system. You want to wander the woods, see what is out here, rather than just following whatever someone else decided they wanted you to see. There's a lot of freedom in being able to always find your way back and not relying on a trail. Where I learned these skills, a lot of it's just experience in the backcountry. I've been spending time in the Rocky Mountains ever since I was a kid. I think my first trip was when I was 2. I don't remember it, but that's what I've been told. And ever since then, I've been going into the wilderness with my grandpa, with my dad, and ever since I became an adult, by myself. And I've led groups, and I have spent a ton of time. So a lot of this is just learning through failure, and also learning through just experience, understanding the natural world around me. It's like if you grow up in a city, you don't need a map to get around. Well, the wilderness is like that for me. But that only comes with experience. And a lot of people don't have someone who is knowledgeable to, mentor them into that experience. So where do you start when you have nothing? The other place I learned a lot of these skills was from the Graybearded Green Beret. I went to his Master Navigator course 2 years ago and learned a ton of really valuable skills, also from his book and some of his online teaching. In my opinion, he teaches some of the best land nav, at least for me. Like, sometimes it's hard for me to learn complicated systems, and he does it in a way that's very simple. And then just my own research and stuff. But that's how I learned these skills. Again, I'm just a guy on the internet. Don't take, you don't have to like what I say. If you have something else that works, good for you. But this is something that I think can help a lot of people have the confidence to explore the wilderness and not be in constant fear of getting lost. This method, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, is called an escape azimuth. But it's a little simpler than even an escape azimuth that like I was taught. Okay, so I'm back at home to talk about this next portion before we head back into the field to actually show it in practice. But to get started, I wanted to talk about some baseline of map and compass knowledge to make sure we're all on the same page. That way the terminology I use doesn't get confusing. Okay, so with this compass, there's a lot of features on here that aren't important for what we're going to be doing, but there's a few that are important. So first off, we have our bezel ring here, which is the rotating ring around the compass. You can see how that rotates there. And that ring has numbers from 0 all the way around to 360. And what that gives you is your azimuth. And an azimuth is essentially the angular direction from north, and north would be 0 or 360. So going around, east is 90, south is 180, west is 270, and then north is 360. And so basically that just gives you a numbered angular angle off of 360, which is north. And so that way you can get a more precise direction of travel rather than just saying north, south, east, and west, because there's a lot of difference between north and east. Essentially it's 90 degrees. So it allows you to be more precise with your direction of travel. Another thing is there's a direction of travel indicator here, or arrow, and that's essentially just showing you the top of the compass. And anytime you're getting a azimuth, you want to make sure that that is pointing the direction you're going. So if you're going to be traveling that direction, you want to make sure the azimuth you're getting is indicated by that direction of travel arrow. That's important so you don't end up going the wrong direction. Another thing to mention, inside the bezel, which is this clear portion here, the rotating part, there are these lines, and those you use to line up with the lines on your map to make sure your compass is aligned to the map. Another thing is you have this arrow on the inside, which is fixed. It doesn't spin freely like this one here. And that one looks kind of like a house or a shed, and it is commonly referred to as the dog house or the shed. So when you say put red in the shed, it means you're taking this red north arrow, the magnetic needle, and rotating the compass until the red magnetic needle is in the shed. So that's an important feature just to mention. And then I said this floating needle, which is obviously magnetic, that's how a compass works, is your magnetic needle. North is indicated by the red, south is the white, and that will point to magnetic north as long as there's no metal introduced to that needle. That will throw it off. You can see my pen here is doing that already. That's not really important for right now because we're inside. We're just going to be referencing off of the actual map for north rather than using the magnetic needle. But when we get out into the field, that will be important. So that's essentially all the important features on this compass to mention. We'll get into how to use it in just a second. But then on a map, something that's important is on all outdoor recreational maps, unless otherwise noted, north is always the top of the map. So it's oriented always with north at the top. And then you're also going to have these black lines or In this case, we have blue X's, which indicate the UTM grids. And again, talking about grids is beyond the scope of this video, but using these black lines as reference lines, because that's laid out for the actual grid of the map. So those lines are pointing to grid north. You'll be using those lines with the lines inside your compass housing to align your compass to your map, so you're actually getting the same information between the two. Really, there's nothing else super important about map reading for this. This is a topographic map that has a lot of detail for orienteering, but it's not necessary for what we're doing in this video. You could just be using a standard trail map that you get from like a visitor center. If you have no idea where to get maps, visitor centers are a good place to start. Another one is CalTopo. It's an online website that you can download all sorts of map layers, or not really download, but you can look at all sorts of map layers of anywhere, and it will have a lot of the same information. So you don't actually have to have a physical copy of the map. You can just look up online and get this information. It's better to have a physical copy in my opinion, but you can get that online. But yeah, it could just be a standard trail map that just shows roadways, trails, some major waterways, but it doesn't have all the topographic lines to show topography or terrain, or it doesn't have to be as detailed. So having a topographical map like this is really useful for orienteering, because it takes something that would ordinarily just be 2D, and using all these topographic lines, it makes it 3D, so you can see terrain better. But that's not necessary for what we're doing. It's just the map that I have on hand, so it's what I'm going to be using. And I do recommend you guys learn how to use topographic maps if you're going to be spending time in the backcountry. On this map, blue is water, obviously. So waterways are important to know, like this one right here. And then in this case, we have road systems that are marked, both four-wheel drive, like this one right here, and then maintained dirt roads, and then we have paved roads, major interstates, and trail systems. However, not all the trail systems are marked on this, which is common for maps. There can be a lot of trails, like hiking trails, that just don't show up on a map. And so you have to be aware of that, because you might come across a trail that you think you are in one place, but it's actually a completely different trail. All right, before we head out into the field, we want to actually create a plan of where we're going to be. This is important not only to establish your emergency azimuth, in case something goes wrong and you need to get out or you get lost, also so you can let someone you know where you're going to be, as well as when you're going to be coming out, so that way if you do not come out when you say, they can send in search and rescue to look for you if there is an emergency. So you should be doing this anyways, but I'm going to show how to get some information that can help you self-rescue if necessary. First thing you want to look for or decide is where you're going to actually park your vehicle. In this case, we're going to be parked here at this parking area. I have it circled. And then you're going to look at where you want to go. And for me, I am looking at this valley through here. We have a major ridge line over here, and we have a road that kind of runs down the middle of the valley, and then we have this whole hillside, some smaller valleys, and there's a waterway that runs through here with some small what looks like ponds, most likely beaver ponds. So maybe I want to go see if there's active beaver in these ponds. Maybe I just want to explore this area, see what it looks like. You know, there's lots of reasons, but you want to pick an area. In this case, I'm looking at this area right here, just going out for the day, so I don't need you know, a major area. You might have to do this for every day that you're going to be out if you're going for a longer trip. You know, you have to establish an emergency escape point for every day because things might change. But in this case, I'm just going to be in this area right here. So if I've established that I'm going to be parked here and I'm going to be hiking in a southeasterly direction down through here. So with that, I'm going to start looking for major features that I can use as an escape point. So right off the bat, I see this roadway that runs all the way, it parallels the entire area I'm going to be in, and it's a well-established dirt road that's maintained. And so what you're looking for in this feature is a linear terrain or linear feature that runs parallel to the area you're going to be, that is uncrossable without knowing. So you don't want this to be a small little creek or drainage that you might accidentally cross, without knowing it, or even a trail, like a bike trail or a hiking trail. Those are oftentimes, easily mistakable depending on where you're at. If it's dark, if it's bad weather, if you're disoriented, you could walk across it, or be second guessing yourself the whole way, wondering if you walked across it. So you want it to be something that no matter what's going on, if you've crossed it. So a road is a great option because you're not just going to accidentally walk across the road if you're still, if you're not completely out of your mind, which you shouldn't be trying to self-rescue at that point anyways. But in this case, we have this road that runs in a generally north-south direction with a little bit more in a northwesterly direction, but for our sake, it's roughly a north-south direction. And it runs the entire length of the area we're going to be in, which is important because then it doesn't matter where we are from down here all the way up to where we're parked. If we head in a generally southeasterly direction, or southwest, sorry, in a southwesterly direction, and we're going to hit this road. So that's important to establish. Also, I usually try to find a road that intersects with where I'm parked or a known location. So in this case, anywhere I hit this road, if I follow it north, it's going to lead me back to where I'm parked. This could also be a hunting cabin, anything that is a known location that gets you back to a safe spot that you can then exfil out of or get yourself out. That's important. It doesn't have to be that way. If it's a road, there's a chance you're going to run into people and they can get you out. But if you pick some random road and then you have to walk all the way back to civilization, that's going to take a long time. So I try to pick something that's going to take me back to my vehicle. You want this road, it doesn't have to be a road. It could be a major waterway, or even a ridge line. Those you have to be more careful with because waterways can sometimes be hard to follow. But if there's no roads in your area, you could use something like that. However, in most places in the lower 48, there's going to be a road within a few miles of where you are because you had to get there by vehicle anyways. And usually most wilderness areas, most national forests, state parks, they all have road, four-wheel drive roads or roads going through them or around them that within a few miles, now it might be, 10 miles or so, but within a few miles you'll have a road. So I find this method in most areas that I've ever been to be fairly effective. I'm sure there's scenarios where there's not going to be a road and then you're going to have to use other systems. But at that point, if you're looking at an area and there's just no good escape route or an emergency Azmith to get you to a linear feature that leads you back to a known location, then maybe don't go there. If you're relying on this basic level of land nav, maybe find a different place because it's easy to think nothing bad's going to happen, but then if you have no plan for if it does, then if something bad happens, you're kind of screwed. So it's important to, establish these emergency plans and stick to them and to have them every time. You can't slack off on this because there's nothing worse than being lost and having no idea what to do. In this case, we have this linear feature that runs parallel to the area we're in, it's uncrossable without knowing. Also, I am looking at this and I don't see any major terrain that will hinder my ability to reach it from where I'm going to be. So if there's a major river in between you and that road, then it's going to be hard to cross that river safely, depending on the time of year and your skill level. So you just want to pay attention to that. Like if I chose this road up here, and I had to go on my emergency azimuth to get to it, and I would have to cross this ridge line and this ridge line to get over to this road. That's a lot of terrain. There's some pretty steep terrain in here, I can tell. So it would be a hazard to get over here. If that's all I have, then that's all I have, and I'll have to navigate that accordingly to get to my escape point, and then I'll have a long walk back. But in this case, I have a much closer road that there's no major terrain that would be really hard to cross or unsafe to cross. There are some small rivers or creeks, but those are navigable based on what I'm seeing here to be able to get back to this road. Something else you can do before you go into the area is you can drive this road and just look at it. So that way, anywhere you intersect with it, you might be able to identify where you're at, or just kind of get an idea of the road so you know whether or not you're on the right road if you have to go on your emergency azimuth to get out. You don't have to do that, but that is a nice way to get familiar with that escape route. The next thing you want to do is you want to take your compass, and you want to, using that direction of travel arrow that we talked about earlier right there, you want to point that at that road you're going to be in with the back of your compass in the area you're going to be. And then you want to rotate your bezel ring until the north arrow, not the magnetic needle that points to magnetic north, but the actual north arrow in the housing, you want to rotate that until it's pointing to the top of your map. And if you want to be really precise, you can take some of these black lines and line up the lines inside your bezel ring, so that way they're perfectly aligned. That way you know that north is actually pointing to the grid north of the map, if you want to be really precise. It doesn't have to be that precise. As long as it's pointing to the top of the map, you should be good, because it's like for this kind of thing, being super precise is not necessary. That's why I like it. So then you just want to kind of check along the whole route you're going to be, making sure that that same direction is going to work. So I'm just running it down, making sure north stays to the top of the map and the direction of travel arrow still points to that road, just to make sure there's no crazy turns. Like if I was down here, that road veers off, so then if I headed in that direction, it would take me past that road. It wouldn't intersect me with that road. In this case, I'm not going to be going that far down. I'm just going to be staying up here. So I can just check and make sure everywhere I'm going to be, that direction will work. So then I can look at the top of my compass at that direction of travel arrow, and I see that I have an azimuth of 220 degrees. And the tick marks on your compass will represent different things based on your whatever compass you have. In this case, each one is 5 degrees. So I have 220 degrees is the azimuth that I would have to head on to head out. Now that's a roughly southwesterly direction. So if you don't have a compass that has azimuth markings and it's just north, south, east, west, north, and then the intermediates, then you could just use that rough southwest direction and it should take you to this road. It doesn't have to be super precise. I like having that actual precise azimuth of 220, but depending on your compass, that will depend. So you want to record that on a notebook. So I have 220 degrees which is a roughly southwest direction. Another thing you want to record is just the route, and record what road this is. Maybe write the name of it down, so that way if you come across the road and you run into someone, you can verify, like, hey, do you know what road this is? Now, I've had it in the past where I've had hikers tell me I'm on a different trail than I'm actually on because they don't know what trail they're on. So don't always trust that, but the more information you have about your escape route, the more useful it can be. If I'm just going on a real quick trip, I can just look up on my phone real quick. Oh, okay, I got a road, that's my escape route. Get a quick Azmith, jot it down, and that's all the information I need. But if you're going on a longer trip, if you're less experienced, it is nice to have more information about your escape route. And you can relay that information to the person you're leaving your plan with so they know where they can be looking for you if something goes wrong. So we have our azimuth of 220 degrees. We know anywhere in this area that we're going to be in, if we walk that direction, it's going to intersect with this road. We can then head on a northerly direction on this road to get out. One thing to note, this road has no, at any point does it circle back on itself. If it does, you want to notate that, because then in that case, if it circles back on itself and then goes north again, at a certain point, you're going to be heading south, which could throw you off because you're like, oh, I'm going the wrong way, but then it circles back around. In this case, it never heads south. It's never going to circle back on itself going south unless you're going the wrong way. So that's useful. It does have a few turns where you might be heading north or west, or east or west directions. But nowhere where it's going to be doubling back on itself. There's also something to note. We have a four-wheel drive road here, and that might be a good thing to mention. And then we have another one up here. Just mention that there are some four-wheel drive roads in the area that you're going to be in, so you don't assume that one of those is your road. This is on the map. It's a well-established dirt road, so you can tell, oh, this is a heavily traveled, like, it's not just a little two-track four-wheel drive road. So just keep those things in mind so you don't get to the wrong road and assume it's your road and you start hiking on that. And I think that's really all you have to do. So you find your escape route, you get an azimuth to that escape route. One thing to mention, azimuth and bearing are used interchangeably often, but they are technically different. I'm not going to get into the differences. I use azimuth because that's technically what this is. A bearing is a nautical term, but oftentimes you will hear bearing and azimuth used interchangeably. So just keep that in mind, not to confuse you guys. So you find your azimuth, figure out what it is, you write that information down, and now you can go explore this area at will, doing whatever you want. And then at any point, if you get yourself lost, you can head on that emergency azimuth, intersect this road, head north on this road, or in a northerly direction, and follow that until it takes you to the known location, which is where you're parked. And then you can get out. With that, if you find yourself lost out here, as long as you're not expected back soon, in that case, if people are going to start sending search and rescue out, you want to get out as soon as possible if you get lost, so you can let people know you're just running late. But if you have plenty of time, don't feel like as soon as you feel lost, you have to panic and head on your emergency azimuth and get out. You're going to wander around and try to find where you're at, try to find your way back, practice using terrain features, just kind of like play with some stuff to try to find your way out. Because at any point, it doesn't matter where you are. You can't get yourself more lost because you always know how you can get out. It might take way longer than, the way you came in, but you can always get out. So that's really nice. You don't have to freak out and immediately start heading on your escape azimuth, but it is nice to be able to kind of find yourself. And if you can't, you always know you can get out. Really helpful. It takes away a lot of the pressure, a lot of the fear that comes with being lost. And there was a time in my life when I was a young teenager and I was hunting with my dad. If I would have known this technique, I would have been way less scared. But I was all turned around, disoriented. Thankfully, he was there, so like he knew where we were. But I was really scared. Like if something happens to Dad, I might I won't be able to find my way out. So having that escape azimuth that at any point you can head on that and get your way out is really nice. But yeah, that's the technique. Really simple. Now let's head out into the field and actually show this in this actual location, show this in play. All right, guys, here we are. We're lost. What do we do now? So, you don't want to underestimate the feeling of panic you'll have when you don't know where you're at. I've been there before. It's just like this deep feeling inside you of feeling terrified, and it's real. I've seen it happen in other people too, so it's important that when you have that feeling and you're like, okay, this is it, I'm lost, I have no idea where I'm at, no idea how to get back, I don't know where I'm supposed to go, you stop. Don't just run around. You can hurt yourself, you can make dumb decisions, so just chill. There's no reason in the world you have to get out immediately. Like, just stop. If you're prepared, like I am, I got my gear with me, I'm dressed appropriately, I don't have to worry. If you haven't, take a drink of water. You should have water with you. Make sure you stay hydrated. Eat a snack if you have some. Just ate lunch, so I'm not hungry right now, but and then just kind of get your bearings. Look around. Got some peaks over there. Major terrain feature, ridge line. I'm on a bit of a hill. I hear some noise over there. Sounds like vehicles. Can't see the sun, so can't use the sun to try to figure out where I'm at. But there's a bit of a breeze, storm coming, but it's peaceful. Take in your surroundings, use all your senses, smell the air, look around, orient yourself, calm your breathing. Now, we are prepared for this. We didn't think we had to use it. We think it was just going to be an easy hike in on a trail, look around, but then we saw this hill, we wanted to come up here, kept hiking. We just don't know where we are now. But we're prepared. In my side pocket here, got my navigation kit. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get my compass. It also has my whistle on it. So that way if we are, really lost and we need to signal for rescue, we got our whistle. There's also a mirror on my compass. That's a signal mirror if the sun was out. But I got that. If it's starting to get dark, I would get my headlamp out, put that on, prepare myself for a mindset shift of now I need to actually take action towards my survival. And I want to make sure I keep that compass readily available. So I'm going to stick it here in my chest pocket. Maybe dummy cord it to yourself, tie a lanyard around your neck and hang it there so you can't lose it. And then we got our notebook that we wrote down our emergency azimuth and our escape azimuth. If you remember, it's 220 degrees, or generally southwest. So we didn't bring our map with us. All we have is that information we wrote down, 220 degrees southwest. So, gonna put 220 in. All right, 220 degrees is plugged into the compass right there. Double check it. All right, so compass is set up. You want to double check that as you're going, make sure your dial doesn't get moved. We want to make sure we're actually heading in the right direction, because if I have 220 degrees and I just start walking this way, it's not the right direction. How do I know what the right direction is? So you're going to hold this here and you're going to rotate your whole body until that needle, the magnetic needle, is in the shed. One thing to mention is you want to keep your compass flat so that needle can move freely. And you also don't want to introduce any metal object near your compass. So if you have like a firearm in your chest pack and you hold it close to it, it will throw that off. Now, The front of my compass is facing 220 degrees. So if I head that way, as long as that needle stays in the doghouse, I'm good. Now, for you navigation experts out there and people who have experience, you'll notice that I did not mention declination at all. And what declination is it's the angular difference between magnetic north and grid north. Your map is oriented to grid north. Your compass is magnetic north. And depending on where in the world you're at, it will be a declination of a few degrees. I know around here it's between 7 and 8 degrees. And over long distance, that azimuth you get from your map, if you don't adjust for declination on your compass and you walk that way, because magnetic north is different than grid north, you'll be off a few degrees. That's not a huge concern for this type of navigation, so I'm not going to get into how to adjust for that. But the reason I'm not mentioning that is because that's a linear feature. I'm not trying to get on a precise straight line. I'm trying to head in a generally rough direction. And it doesn't matter where on that road that I hit. I know I have to go north on that to run into my vehicle because I'm way south of my vehicle. I know that for a fact. What we're going to do, or hold it in front of our body, center mass. We're going to rotate our body until that needle is in the shed, the red part of the needle, the north. And then we're going to start walking in that direction. Now, we don't have to walk in a precise direction like this, staring at our compass the whole time, because then you can like trip over logs. And then you come up to this and you're like, oh, now I gotta like try to climb over that, walking in a straight direction. This is just a rough idea of the direction you need to go. So you can be like, all right, I need to head that way. So you look up on the horizon, you're like, okay, up on that hill, I'll get another, I'll check my compass again, get reoriented. So then you can wander around to get that way. You don't have to be staring at your compass the whole time, because again, it doesn't matter if you're a few degrees off one way or the other. All right, so I've been going on a little bit and I've been following my compass. I'm up on this hill now and I have a good vantage point, and these are really useful if you come across a good vantage point, because I can see there's a major road out there with like 18 wheelers on it. That's definitely not my dirt road that I'm headed towards, but on the map I remember that there was an interstate further west of that dirt road I'm going towards. So that kind of like reinforces that, oh, I'm headed in the right direction. There's civilization, and I remember that on the map. But you don't always get to see that. Sometimes you just got to trust the compass and keep walking. But you should always, your compass is a trustworthy instrument. If you have a good one, you should invest in a good compass. This is a Silva compass, but Sunto makes other good ones. Those are really the only two brands that I have experience with and would recommend. All right, so we just came across this very well-maintained dirt road. I'm thinking this is my road. The map, I remember one thing, you want to take note of, are you going to be crossing any other roads to get to your escape point? I wasn't. There was no other roads on that map, and there's no other like well-maintained dirt roads in the area, that except for some like four-wheel drive roads. But this one's very well maintained, and your map shouldn't be wrong. Maybe in your area it is. I've never had a well-maintained like dirt road not marked on the map, especially a good topographic map. Now that we're on the road, we want to start heading in a north direction. So we then can take our compass and rotate that bezel to an azimuth of 360, which is north. And then we rotate our body until red is in the shed. So we know north is that way. Now, obviously this road's gonna snake and turn, but as long as we're heading in a generally north direction and we don't start going some other direction, we remember the road is gonna be running in a north-south direction. So as long as we're not heading south at any time, we should be fine, because there wasn't any like times the road snaked back on itself. So I'd rather cover a lot of distance if I'm lost on a road than trying to bust brush and risk getting injured. There's also a higher chance of running into people on a road, obviously, so you can ask for help if you need it. I'm just gonna stay on this until I run into my vehicle. All right, guys, that worked. Followed this north for a few miles. There's my vehicle right there. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Hope you learned something out of it, and hopefully it allows you to get out and adventure more. Till the next one, adventure with purpose.